Okay. Do we have Chris and Marlene? Can they? Good, okay.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. The January 30th, 2020 Oregon State Lottery Commission is now in session. It is noted for the record that Commissioners Patel and Telfer are attending via telephone, and a quorum of commissioners is present for today's meeting. Today's meeting is being live streamed on the internet, and a link to the video recording is posted on the Oregon Lottery website. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Commissioner Patel?
Present.
Commissioner Telfer?
Here.
Commissioner Valdivia?
Present.
Commissioner Wilcox? Here. Chair Staffa?
Here. Thank you. We'll open the meeting now for public comment. The public comment portion of the meeting is an opportunity to take comments from the public, but not to engage in discussion. The commission will not respond to questions or comments received during today's meeting. As I call your name, please come forward to the microphone, state your name for the record, and please limit your comments to 3 minutes. You may provide the clerk with copies of any handouts you've prepared, and Howard Marlowe, you're first, and we have your handout.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Afternoon, members of the PAC. My name is Howard Marlowe, certified wellness specialist. I am also a certified gambling recovery mentor. I'm a certified recovery mentor working for the Mental Health Addiction Association of Oregon. There we go.
Thank you.
And today I would like to read a poem from a very dear friend of mine and what the lottery has done for her life. The lottery does things to real people. There is no hope, no sunshine today. It's 90 degrees and light outside, but the sun to warm my soul has died. My house sold, the money spent on the lottery, rentals, savings, stocks sold too, nothing left but me. Not much solace that it helped children to read and environmentally help wildlife to feed. For the Oregon Lottery, it does good things. And to gamble the day I sold my rings. With a mountain of debt that's overwhelming my life, now and forever will only be strife. Some say I was stupid, a fool to play, escape addiction, compulsion, call it what you may. But last year the lottery made $400 million on video poker, so see I wasn't the only stupid joker. The lottery has helped build roads, bridges, and parks, sent children on field trips to up their marks, cleaned up rivers for salmon to spawn, and for me I have nothing else to pawn. For the Oregon Lottery, it does good things. But wait a minute, I can still sing. I'll walk down the roads, live in their parks. For the money I spent, I should own a part. I'll sleep under the bridge, catch fish from the river. No one can say I was ever a quitter. P.S. With the support of Gamblers Anonymous, I have stopped the devastation and tears. No haunting thoughts of suicide or gambling, now for 18 years. Lila Calloway. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Marlowe. With that, we'll move to Commissioner Communications. I know that Commissioner Valdivia, you have a report.
Yes,
Sorry.
I do. Thank you, Chair Madoff. For the record, this is the annual update of the Audit Committee, which I am a part of. And I have a twofold obligation this time. We're going to give the annual update, and plus we had an Audit Committee meeting earlier today, so I'll report on that as well. And I'll do that first. We had an update on our enterprise risk management that is happening here throughout Lottery, and just a couple of added notes from Kathy Ortega, who updated us this afternoon. There's a couple of items that may pose some risk for the Lottery regarding public records access, and to determine what's confidential, what's not confidential. And so I am confident that the management staff is handling it. It's just going to be a little complicated. And also we had some issues logging on to the Scoreboard app, and they're working on that, and it appears to be just normal issues because it's software. Okay, but they're working through that as well. We're also updated on the latest report or review that the Internal Audit Department completed, and it was on the casino prohibition rule compliance. And the review, and I'm just going to give a real short update on that because we're going to have some of the team come and update us with details. But the percentage of accuracy was very, very high, and it was good. Okay. We're also updated on the future audit plan of projects that the audit department has coming up. And regarding last year's plan, they were able to meet all their goals in completing last year's plan, and so hopefully the future sees the same. All right, and then also in the meeting, we were updated on the peer review that is going to happen here at Lottery probably in September or October, and that basically entails an out-of-state audit team to come and do a compliance review on the internal audit shop. And they're getting ready for that. Any questions on any of that?
The peer review are they looking at something different than what our internal audit and the Secretary of State looks at?
Yeah, so all the audits that, or reviews that I report on have to be specifically, there are rules that they have to adhere to. They come in to make sure that our audit department is adhering to those rules.
I see, it's sort of like a quality check almost.
Exactly, that's what it is. It's other auditors coming in to make sure we're auditing correctly.
Okay.
And every public auditing firm goes through the same thing.
And if I may, Madam Chair, the North American Association of State and Provincial Lotteries has a team of internal auditors from member lotteries, and they're the ones that come in.
And they rotate.
And we rotate them out. So our staff will go out in another year or two and review another lottery, and we'll have two
Great.
outside lottery auditors coming in here.
Sounds like a good
And it's a
practice.
professional standards
Yeah.
check.
Any other questions or comments from the commission for Commissioner Valdivia? Okay.
All right, for the record, the annual update. So I'm not going to go over all the audits that we reviewed because we've expressed those during the year, during the audit committee updates. Just to remind the commission our purpose and our authority. Our purpose is to assist the state lottery in fulfilling its responsibility to oversee financial reporting, its system internal control, and the process of monitoring the compliance with laws, regulations, and policies. Our authority comes from OAR 125-700-0135, which basically requires each agency to have that function, which obviously we do. We have the committee audit charter, which was approved last November of 18, gives us the authority to conduct or authorize investigations, any matters, within the scope of our responsibility. Basically, seek legal advice, retain independent contractors, facilitate resolution of disagreements between management and internal or external auditors. And as far as I've been here, I don't think we've had to do that, which is a very good thing.
Mm-hmm.
And the meetings consist of myself, Commissioner Patel, and the director, and then the internal audit team. And the meetings are facilitated by Internal Audit Chief Robert Martinez. And just to go over quickly to conclude 2019 activities, the committee fulfilled its responsibilities as outlined in the charter. And we met 4 times, and our activities included reviewing, taking on audit findings, follow-up, the updates on the ERM process, hearing reports from the Oregon Audits Division, and receiving regular updates from internal audit activities. And that's the annual update, and if you have any questions on any of that, I'm free to do
Questions or
that.
comments from the commission? Hearing none, thank you.
All right, you're welcome.
Any other communications from any of the other commissioners? I would like to thank the lottery for allowing me to fill in for Director Pack at the Martin Luther King breakfast. I did not do as good a job as he would have done, but it was a really nice experience. I'm really proud of the lottery for the support it gives and the scholarships we awarded. And I'm trying to remember, there were 4 or 5 that we gave. They were all amazing. They were all women, and they were amazing women. And they were all so thrilled to get the money to help with their education. So it really made me feel good. So thank you for letting me do that. It was a great event, huge event, lots of people. Okay, let's move to the director's report.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'll start with the MLK breakfast, and I'll start by thanking you for representing Lottery at the Scanner Foundation's 34th Annual MLK Breakfast last week. I actually thoroughly enjoyed sleeping in for the first MLK Day since I've come here. But the event draws business and government leaders from across Oregon, and it's an opportunity, of course, to celebrate the contributions of Dr. King and so many others while inspiring action right now. We did present 4 scholarships, and I just want to talk about those recipients during this event. Pippa Cavill is now a freshman at the University of Oregon studying business. When Pippa is not in the classroom or working out, you can find her at the American English Institute working as a tutor to fellow students. Second is Jamie Fields, a freshman at Whitman College in Walla Walla, Washington, majoring in English, but English isn't her only passion. She's also double minoring in Japanese and theater. Cicely Larkin, a senior at Grant High School in Portland, plans on attending Oregon State University and studying kinesiology. I have to say that twice. Cicely discovered her passion for kinesiology by helping disabled individuals through her work at her church. And finally, Kalkidan Katema, or KK, as her friends call her, intends on attending the University of Washington in Seattle and majoring in international studies and women's studies. Currently, KK is enrolled at De La Salle North Catholic High School in Portland.
You did not have to say kinesiology in front of 1,000 people twice.
I think you did far better than I would. Continuing on the educational theme, we have our Teacher of the Year nominations, and time is running out to nominate teachers for the 2021 Oregon Teacher of the Year. Those close tomorrow. Good news, though, nominations are outpacing last year. Product marketing specialist Jen Roper points out we are nearly 100 nominations ahead of where we were last year, but more importantly, we have achieved 1 nomination in 2 of the 3 regions. We didn't receive any nominations last year, so we are truly getting to statewide impact there. Thanks to a lottery partnership, the Oregon Teacher of the Year receives a gift of $5,000 as well as a special fund to cover all travel costs for the year. In addition, a matching gift of $5,000 goes to the Teacher of the Year's school. The winner also receives gifts and recognition from the Council of Chief State School Officers, founder of the National Teacher of the Year program. Additionally, finalists and their school both receive a $2,000 cash award, while regional winners each receive $500.
Director Pack, if I may, I noticed that there was a teacher from Hood River, where I live. He's a fantastic teacher, mentoring students into college who might not otherwise get there. I was just super happy to see that story about him, and it just made me feel really proud of the lottery and where a lot of the funds were going. So, thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to a volunteer event at McIver State Park. Lottery staff took advantage this month of our policy that provides a paid day to volunteer for lottery beneficiaries, maintaining trails at Milo McIver State Park near Estacada. IT's Melissa Pruitt noted, and I quote, "It amazes me how much work must go into keeping these trails maintained. If you haven't ever been to this park or trail, I hope you find the time when the weather warms up." Besides cleaning up state parks, lottery employees this year have improved watersheds with Solve and helped Oregon veterans experiencing homelessness get access to earned benefits. Some front desk call changes are happening. Starting this week, all front desk phone calls will be routed to our hotline staff, improving the experience for both callers and in-person visitors. And while I wouldn't normally report on a small change like this, I'm sharing today because it reflects a broader focus here at Lottery, putting our customers front and center. Having incoming calls routed to our hotline allows us to better monitor calls for quality, as well as identify trends and feedback we receive. It also frees up our front desk staff to engage directly with players when they visit our office. Moving forward, we should have more examples of how we're working across departments to better serve our customers, as we are launching a Customer Experience Center of Excellence. Moving on to sales update, we have an update later on in the meeting, and staff will give you an in-depth view into last quarter's performance. Overall, those sales are holding steady, with Video Lottery continuing to show healthy growth. On the scoreboard platform, players in December placed nearly 900,000 individual wagers, totaling $22.4 million. That translated into $1.6 million in gross gaming revenue. Average wager was $27. Basketball was the most popular sport, followed by football and hockey. We know there's a lot of interest around sports betting, and we recently began posting our monthly activity reports on the Press Center page on Lottery's external website. And finally, some winter stories. Laundry Day got very exciting for Portland's Scott Moe, who accidentally washed his wallet with an Oregon's Game Megabucks ticket worth $8.4 million inside. I washed my wallet and then realized I had lottery tickets in there, Moe said. A couple of the tickets were destroyed, but not the jackpot ticket. Moe said that luckily the ticket worth $8.4 million was the last one he bought and protected by other tickets in his wallet. Moe was piecing together his laundered lottery tickets right before bed, and around midnight utilized the lottery's ticket scanning app for the first time to learn he had won the $8.4 million jackpot. Needless to say, he didn't get much sleep. Joseph Garza from Portland knows the person who was responsible for his $100,000 Powerball win, his father. Quote, "When I won, the first thing I did was call my mom and say that my dad was sending us a miracle," Garza said of his father, who passed away last August. Part of the prize will be donated to the church where we held his service. It was beautiful, and they did a great job. Garza won using the numbers he's played for the past 3 years, a combination of his old baseball jersey and birthdays of family members. He won after purchasing a $9 Powerball ticket with the Power Play option for the January 4th drawing. Finally, Nancy Graham of Hillsborough said she got the perfect holiday gift from her husband, Barry, cool name, a holiday scratch-it worth $150,000. You could say it was a memorable Christmas, Nancy said. Barry got his wife of 49 years the scratch-it as their tradition around the holidays. Barry says he never knows what to get her, so he gets family member scratch-its. When Nancy played the holiday magic ticket, she thought she had won $150. But when she took it back to the store to claim her prize, they told her she was missing a few zeros. "We are planning an Alaskan cruise and remodeling our kitchen," she said. "It's going to good use." And that is my report for the month.
Thank you. Questions or comments for the director? Great. Let's move to the minutes of the previous commission meeting. The minutes of the previous commission meeting have been circulated to the commission in advance of the meeting. If there are no changes to the minutes, is there a motion to approve?
I move that the minutes of the Oregon State Lottery Commission meeting held on December 20th, 2019 be approved as final as presented today.
Do I have a second?
Second?
Will the clerk please call the roll?
Commissioner Patel?
Aye.
Commissioner Telfer?
Aye.
Commissioner Valdivia?
Aye.
Commissioner Wilcox?
Aye.
Chair Staffa?
Aye. Thank you. For the record, the motion is passed. Okay, let's, Kathy, thank you. We'll hear on the financial report now.
I'm used to saying good morning, so now I have to say good afternoon, Chair Sathoff, Commissioners, Director Pack. For the record, my name is Kathy Ortega, Chief Financial Officer for the Oregon Lottery, and I actually have two things for you today. We'll start off with the monthly financial statement that covers the period ending December 31st. Flipping to the first page, which is the monthly operating statement for the month of November, we have a positive revenue variance of $3.2 million. We have some negative variances, which really are attributable to some of the mid-year activities which we'll discuss later in my second body of work. We have net profit positive variance of $6.428 million for the month. And on the year-to-date, we have a 5.448 positive revenue variance and a positive net profit variance of 34.7 million. Have a couple minor variances on services and supplies, the retailer network or timing differences, the intergovernmental charges largely represent the financial audit, which the budget is spread over 12 months, but the charges are incurred basically July through December. So we should see that line tick up going forward. I have the balance sheet as of December 31st for you to take a look at. And I also have, we're at the end of a quarter, so I have the capital report. We're a little behind on the capital spending, but I think over the next couple of months, you're going to see that change. You're approving some contracts today. On a total budget of $54.566 million, we spent $1.6 million. You can see the categories that we've spent it on. We'll be executing on some of these things, I think, before the end of the year. I'd be happy to answer any questions on the financial report today.
I just have two questions. One, I just need a reminder. On the balance sheet, the restricted for OPEB asset, remind me what that is. That-
OPEB is Oregon Public Benefit Employer something. It's gap-related entries that we have to book from the pension plan that come down once a
I thought
year.
I had to do with the pension plan, but I wasn't quite sure. And on the capital outlay, I'm getting the fiscal years confused. Is this halfway through the year?
Yes,
Okay, so it looks like you're planning to spend most of the money at the last half?
yes.
Okay, just checking. Anybody else? Thanks, Kathy. We need to approve this for you then.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm telling you to go ahead, and it's my job. Is there a motion to approve the monthly financial statement?
I move that the Oregon State Lottery financial statements for month ended December 31st, 2009 be approved for the record as presented today.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Will the clerk call the roll?
Commissioner Patel?
Aye.
Commissioner Telfer?
Aye.
Commissioner Valdivia?
Aye.
Commissioner Wilcox?
Aye.
Chair Stanoff?
Aye. For the record, the motion is passed. Thank you.
The second thing I have for you today is some information and requesting approval for a mid-year adjustment. And a little bit different in our process is that this is for operations, except for the ongoing projections for sports, which we are working on and will bring you next month. I've included the details of what is in here. I guess the highlight and the important takeaway from all of this is that we have money in the budget that's going to need to go into the next year. Overall, the impact is $12.7 million reduction to the budget, but it's not a reduction, it's a deferral. And so I've included for you the detail, which is a little bit of an eye chart. But you can see the types of things that are going to be moving or where there's some savings that we've incurred. And then next month, I'll be bringing the remaining projection for scoreboard. And when we get that done, we'll take a look at the two. I'm anticipating, I can probably tell you that it will reduce this benefit a little bit, but we'll be adding those two together for the overall impact to the organization. You're only looking at ongoing operations here, but we'll have that for you review and approval next month. It's just a little bit of a challenge.
Yeah, so it's a net reduction right now. When you add in the scoreboard, are you thinking
Still be a reduction.
again?
Mhm.
Okay. And then two other questions. I know that a lot of this is deferred, rolled over. On the savings permanent budget reductions section, you have several that are cancellations.
Right,
So those are permanent.
permanent.
Yeah, cost savings or whatever, and
For that particular item, it could be. Next year, something as an alternative comes back, but there are no plans to execute on that particular item in the budget for this year.
If I may, Madam Chair, I think I was going to comment on that savings portion, that there is, a fairly sizable amount that are actual savings, not deferrals, and that's a result of our continued look at revisiting the way we do business, trying to optimize and find efficiencies and make smarter decisions. So I'm hopeful that as we continue to do mid-year adjustments like this, that number will still be there as we find other ways to optimize our performance.
great. Okay. Thank you. Any questions or comments from the rest of the commission? Okay, hearing none. Would you like us to approve the rebalance, or do you have more you want to talk to us about? Okay.
That's it.
Is there a motion to approve the fiscal year 20 mid-year budget rebalance?
I move that the Oregon State Lottery Commission approve the changes to the fiscal year 20 budget as presented in the fiscal year 20 mid-year budget rebalance memorandum presented today. It was a mouthful, sorry about that.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Will the clerk call the roll?
Commissioner Patel?
Aye.
Commissioner Telfer?
Aye.
Commissioner Valdivia?
Aye.
Commissioner Wilcox?
Aye.
Chair Sapa?
Aye. For the record, the motion has passed.
Thank you.
Thanks. And now we're going to hear from Director Pack regarding the major procurement of BLTs.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioners, we've talked about this item a couple of times, most recently the last commission meeting. This is the result of field trials of three different terminals, new terminals to the market. In the market, we are recommending 2 terminals to replace, and staff was here last month giving you the update, so I don't need to repeat all of the details of that other than to emphasize that the new terminals that we're purchasing from both IGT and Aristocrat performed very well during the field tests, outpacing even the highest performing terminals that we have in the market today. So we are hopeful that this will continue to see incremental sales growth once they get delivered and distributed out and the older terminals replaced. That starts, I think, in March and should conclude in the summer. Nodding for Farshad, yes, yes. So with that, I'm happy to answer any other questions, and if not, I would ask for approval to enter into a major procurement.
I would just note for the record that we had materials that had been provided to us previously and did, I think, have a pretty robust conversation. But any other questions or comments from, for the director from the commissioners? Okay. Is there a motion to authorize the lottery to initiate a major procurement? It's so long.
It's a long one. We're going to
Yeah.
fight over this one.
Yeah.
I move that the Oregon State Lottery Commission authorize the Director of the Oregon Lottery to enter into a major procurement with both IGT and Aristocrat to purchase a total of up to 2,720 new video lottery terminals, which will require a total initial outlay not to exceed $44,216,950. In addition, I move that the Commission authorize the extension of the lease of up to 100 field trial terminals to remain in the field until the new terminal deployment at a cost not to exceed $1,628,000. I further move that the Commission provide approval for the lottery to set aside funds for these procurements in preparation for executing the contracts.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Will the clerk call the roll?
Commissioner Patel?
Aye.
Commissioner Telfer?
Aye.
Commissioner Valdivia?
Aye?
Commissioner Wilcox?
Aye.
Chair Sabah?
Aye. For the record, the motion is passed. Okay. This will be Director Pack. Do you want Chris to come up at the same time?
Yeah, Chris, can you come on up to the table?
Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioners, 2 items for you today relating to the renewal of our contract with all of our retailers. I'll be asking for your approval of 2 items. One is the contract itself, which sets out the terms and conditions by which a retailer and the lottery engage. It refers to commission rates that are established in rules. So the second thing I'll be asking for your approval of is adoption of that rule, which includes the commission rate changes. So you have seen, who am I pointing at? You're going to have to move me. Can you help me, Tiffany? So you've seen most of these documents before. I'll just kind of walk through them for the record. These are the proposed substantive changes to the 2020 retail contracts. As we've talked before, we're separating them out into options. So if you're a traditional only retailer, you get that contract. If you're video only, you get that contract. If you combine, you get another version. And in the future, if we have other lottery games that don't fit in that traditional video category, we could create a separate contract for that. We specified that a retailer cannot grant a security interest in lottery proceeds to a third party. Now, if it's part of your rent basis, that's fine, but if you're trying to use it as a way to get a loan or something, for instance, you can't do that. We're requiring a working email address. The vast majority of our retailers already give us one, but we'd like to make this a formal form of communication. We're modifying the section that talks about the compliance with all laws because of CBD products and the sort of 2-stage legality of those products depending upon the source of the CBD. They may or may not be legal, and so some of our retailers do want to sell some of those products, so we want to clarify what's allowed. And then finally, we want to expand the responsible gambling training requirements beyond just key persons to any employee that sells or facilitates play of lottery games. That's really because, the key persons are the people who might manage the business but don't necessarily have direct player-facing contact on a regular basis, but the servers and the checkers and all of that are the ones that really do. So we want to make sure that they're the ones getting the training. So the contract itself has been provided to you in the past. I believe it's in your packet. And unless there are questions, I will pause now and ask for approval, and then we'll go into the rates.
Sure. I would like to make one statement about the process. Just for the record, the lottery has been looking at this for at least a year, if not longer. The commission has been hearing about this process for about the same amount of time. I wanted to both commend the lottery staff for allowing the commission numerous Q&A sessions, workshops, public hearings, allowing us to be part of a lengthy process of diligence so that we could get our questions answered and feel as though we were ready to vote whichever way each commissioner votes. So first I want to thank the lottery for all the hard work and for putting up with all of our questions. We've given you many. And I also want to thank the commission because the commissioners were extremely diligent. They never left a question unanswered. They pushed for more time, so this decision has been pushed out to probably the longest point that they can wait. And all that says to me is that the commission has done a great job of meeting what I would call its obligation to the lottery and its obligation to the state to take the time over an important matter such as this and come to the decisions it has come to. So with that, are there any questions, further questions or comments from any of the commissioners regarding the contract itself and or process?
Yeah, I'd like to say something, Chair Safoff. with just the basic foundation of having to come up with rates and everything, that's a lot of work, and I too want to commend everybody that participated. But also what I noticed, which is a very fine balance, which I'm not too sure if we're still teetering or not, but is the relationship between us and the retailers. And trying to, the work that goes into such a project, not only, like I said, we have to come up with numbers, but there's also an external, unseen relationship that we have to maintain with the retailers at the same time that we are making these proposals. And I just want to commend Director Pack, and I can see that he had that in mind as he was giving us these issues. And even so, we had a last-minute request for some more rates just recently that we were asked to look at. And again, I saw that as trying to maintain that relationship with the retailers. So even though, again, we've said it many times, we're not going to make everybody happy, but at the same time, we're putting our best effort out there to maintain that relationship and give everyone the best, keep everyone's best interest in mind. And so I really appreciate that.
And Chair Sathoff, I'd like to also say, it was really important to me to look at all tiers of retailers, not just the big people or the big businesses that are selling, but across the board from an Elks Club all the way up to the larger tiers of the places that are doing a lot of business in the lottery. And I just really appreciate too that we looked at all aspects of that and tried to come up with the best possible plan that was going to be equitable across the board and leave us feeling okay about it also, because we're representing the lottery, and also I feel like the citizens of Oregon, of course, to make sure this is just a really fair process as much as we can and that it's not taken lightly. So I appreciate all the work that the staff's done and Director Pack and other commissioners, because it was very well discussed. And I feel that my position, being one of the newest commissioners, it seems like I've been here about 1.5 years, but it seems like less sometimes, because this is very confusing and very details that are just huge. And I just want to thank you two for sticking with me and allowing me to understand this as much as I needed to be. So thank you.
Appreciate it. Unless there are further questions or comments, is there a motion to approve the director's recommended 2020 retailer contract?
I move that the Oregon State Lottery Commission approve Director Pack's recommended 2020 retailer contract as presented today to be effective on June 28th, 2020 per the terms of the contract.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Will the clerk call the roll?
Commissioner Patel?
Aye.
Commissioner Telfer?
Aye.
Commissioner Valdivia?
Aye.
Commissioner Wilcox?
Aye.
Chair Safa?
Aye. For the record, the motion has passed. Thank you. Thank you again, all of you.
We have now the rules, which establish the new rate structures for our retailers. Again, you've seen these materials, but for the record, the objectives that I used in making this recommendation is to recognize the pressures that are being felt by both retailers and the lottery, a need to support our long-term operations and investments in games and technology, wanted to eliminate financial barriers for retailers to adopt Platinum Series games and be able to offer shared jackpot games across the network. We wanted a simpler structure that was easier to understand and predict. We wanted to reduce the disincentive that exists in increased sales. And overall, as I think Commissioner Wilcox mentioned, we wanted to minimize the impact to retailers, understanding there will always be winners and losers, if you will, on any change. So for the video lottery retail commissions, my recommendation is a simpler structure based on dollars played. You'll see the option E2 that we've been discussing is my final recommendation. It eliminates the two options, A and B, and moves away from a net proceeds commission basis to that of dollars played. And you'll see 4 tiers, again, descending with a final commission rate of, for sales over for dollars played, over $6.5 million at 1.34%. You'll see in the next slide the average impact to retailers based on where they fall within that continuum of dollars played, as well as some statistics, as you will, if you will, around the number of those retailers, how long they've been with us, and whether they experience negative weeks or average hours of play. Finally, on slide 8, you'll see the estimated impact to retailers by tier of being able to offer additional games such as the Platinum Series or the jackpots, as well as the estimated increase of net sales and transfers to the lottery from that. We've talked about these ad nauseum, it feels like, but I'm also happy to answer questions, but I'll get through to the traditional and then open it up. For traditional lottery retail commissions, I'm recommending a simpler structure that's more aligned to market. Moving away from the tiered structure from 5 to 10% to a flat 8% gross. You'll remember that most lotteries in the U.S. are paying out between 5 and 7% flat rate, so this brings us closer to that, although we are still higher than most. And you'll see the average impact to retailers based on their sales. You've got in your packet the proposed changes to the rule that implement these rate structures. There's no other substantive change, correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, other than the change to dollars played and the actual rates themselves. We've gone through the public comment period and all of the rule procedures. Chris is here to answer any questions you may have on that, and I'm happy to answer questions on my recommended rates. And if there are no other questions, I would ask for approval.
Chris, just if you'd make a comment, I know there was an extensive public review and lots of comments came in, and I reviewed many of those, if not all of them, and my sense is that we generally try to address the public's comments and, in fact, moved some directions to address some of those comments. Could you make any comment on the public process at all for us?
Yeah, I would say that is true. I don't know that everyone would feel totally happy with the rate
Okay, make
structure, but
everybody happy.
but certainly responded, or this proposal is responsive to some specific rate comments we got about that top tier being a little low. Yeah, we did receive 25 written comments, and we had 8 people testify, and I submitted that to you for your consideration, and I think the comments are reflected in the director's recommended rates.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or further comments from the commissioners? Okay, is there a motion to adopt the proposed rulemaking?
I move that the Oregon Administrative Rules, Chapter 177, Division 40, Retailer Contract Rules to include the retailer compensation rates be adopted as presented today to be effective at 5 a.m. on June 28th, 2020.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Will the clerk call the roll?
Commissioner Patel?
Aye.
Commissioner Telfer?
Aye.
Commissioner Valdivia?
Aye.
Commissioner Wilcox?
Aye.
Chair Saffhoff?
Aye. For the record, the motion has passed.
Madam Chair, may I? I would just like to thank the commission for your due diligence. I think this is a terrific example of the important role you play and the importance you place on fulfilling your obligations and responsibilities as commissioners. It's been a long road, and I want to thank staff for 400,000 versions of rates that they've generated and looked at and
I
analyzed.
said we asked a lot of questions.
But I was happy to ask them to do it, to make sure that we really poked at this and got to the best solution that I think we could get to. given all the circumstances. So again, I appreciate your work and your support.
I second all of that. Thank you. And Chris, I think then we're with you again for some
Yep.
more rulemaking.
More rules. It's not working. Okay, so I have two more rulemakings to update you on. You don't need to vote today, so I just want you to know that these are on their way to you. So first, scoreboard and player count rules. As you will recall, we adopted temporary rules on October 1st to support the launch of the new game scoreboard and the digital play option. Those temporary rules reflected the current game portfolio. We adopted a division of rules specific to scoreboard, and we also suspended a division of rules for a game also called scoreboard that we no longer offer because that's confusing. Since we launched, I have engaged with folks who work with scoreboard and interact with our players to make sure that the temporary rules were supportive of our game and were clear to players, and they've held up pretty well. So I've made minor updates to state our policies more clearly, but I do not have any policy changes to call your attention to. You do have all the rules and a summary in your materials. But just a reminder, these are draft rules, so we'd like to send these out and open a public comment process on them and come back to you in March to consider permanent adoption. So if there are no questions on those, we have one other rulemaking. So we discussed this briefly at the October work session. We have a rule that is invalid on a technicality. We failed to deliver our paperwork back in 2012, I think, which just goes to show you paperwork is important. So the rule is with respect to our casino and our concentration prohibitions. And for a reminder, a concentration is between 3 and 6 video retailers in one concentrated area of a strip mall. We'd like to update the rule and have you re-adopt it. So as updated, it does 4 things. It commits lottery to only place terminals in viable businesses, which is the casino prohibition, essentially. It allows lottery to require a video applicant to demonstrate business viability only when we have viability concerns, which is, from my understanding, a small percentage of applicants who have no business operation history. And then 3 and 4, with respect to concentrations, it would allow us to prevent concentrations in the first place by managing applications based on first come, first serve for a small area. And then 4th, in the unlikely event that we have a concentration, it would allow us to resolve it on a last in, first out standard. We thought that was a fair way to do this. Again, these are draft rules, so we would open a public comment process, particularly like to hear from our retailers who are impacted by this rule, and we'd bring it back to you probably March or April to consider permanent adoption.
Chris, on the,
Chris?
on the casino rule,
Yeah.
I want to make sure I understand. The technicality, it didn't have to do with any substance in the
No.
rule. It had to do with missing a window for
Yes.
submitting it
Exactly.
in 2017. Is that correct?
Well, I think it was discovered in 17. I think it might have
Oh.
been 2012. Yeah, there
Oh.
used to be a requirement where you had to mail a copy of your rule to Legislative Council. That is currently done digitally, so that's automatic now, but you used to have to deliver a copy, and we didn't. Yeah, so there was no substantive issue with the with the rule.
And we're using this as a great opportunity to maybe do some cleanup and update in the rule on the
The rule-
concentrations.
Yeah, the original rule is just a little confusing. It requires lots of names out of a hat. So we kind of cleaned it up,
Okay.
yeah.
Commissioner
Yep.
Telfer had a question.
Thank
Chris?
you.
Chris,
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
question on demonstrate business viability. Number
Sure.
one, who is charged with determining that? And do we have the criteria on what business viability is?
Yeah, so thank you for the question. That is fleshed out more in the rule. And that was in our previous rule, in the old rule, that wasn't valid, but we did have it. And it explains what that means. So it really ties back to our casino rule, which, as you know, a main component of that is having income from a non-lottery source. So yeah, that is kind of fleshed out in the rule text when it talks about what does it mean to be viable.
Is it the director that has the final decision-making on viability?
Yeah, well, it's the director or the director's designee, which would probably be retail contracts.
Yeah, Madam
yeah.
Chair, Commissioner Telfer, it's part of that application process to show that they've got other activities happening at the location other than just video lottery. It's not necessarily so much about whether or not the business plan is sound itself. It's just,
Right.
do they have the structure in place to be able to meet the requirements of the contract and the casino prohibition? And that is something that retail contract staff review as they are processing applications.
Okay, so question is, it has not changed from what it was.
Right. Although yeah, I mean, it is updated a bit. Sorry, let me pull up the rule text. I think we give ourselves some discretion to determine the time frame of when we want, how long we need them to demonstrate viability. So it is amended a little bit, but we did have this requirement previously. And we've always had our casino
Okay.
prohibition. So it's kind of like applying the casino prohibition before we place the terminals is essentially what it is.
Commissioner Telfer, I'll follow up with the commission on those changes because it's not leaping to mind, but I remember Ken Brenneman, our prior retail contracts manager, coming with a recommendation.
Yeah.
I think it especially has to do with when a business is changing hands, not having to require the same period of time to show that they were in viable business because they're just changing ownership. It's not changing the business itself. But let me go back and review with Chris the specific changes, and I'll follow up with you on what those are.
But I think the director was
thanks.
always the person who had the discretion. I didn't remember about the designee, but it's always been the director's discretion to make the determination, I think. That hasn't changed.
Yeah. There are lots of things
No,
Yeah.
in this organization that the director has ultimate decision-making on, either under your delegation or just as part of the job. And I have been systematically adding or designee to them because I don't know that it always makes
No.
sense for me to be approving a free training, for instance.
my question wasn't determining that Barry doesn't have that right. It's where does Barry get the input, the financial input? I mean, is that coming from our finance? Is that coming from Kathy? I mean, that type of thing.
Yeah. We'll follow up and get you all the details.
All right, thanks.
Thanks, Chris. Anything else on these rules?
Nope, that's all I've got.
I have one
Oh,
more
sorry.
question
Sure.
on more of the resolving concentrations. And you said in the unlikely event that one would occur. That sounds a little bit to me like maybe that's never happened before, or has it in a couple of instances? I was just curious.
We've had one instance
one.
where concentration existed, that was on Hayden Island.
Okay.
And part of the reason why we're resolving this today is in trying to figure out how to resolve that concentration. Not only were the rules that guided the director's decision on how to terminate a contract invalid, he also didn't follow them because he didn't agree with them. And so part of this is to make sure that we've got processes in place that we can prevent a concentration from occurring again, so we don't. But if we inadvertently had that, then what decision criteria would we use? And in our October work session out in Hood River, you asked me to come back with a recommendation, and that's this last in, first out, LIFO, as I've learned.
Thank you. I was just curious how many times it had
Yeah.
actually occurred. I guess I don't remember hearing that, but.
Just before you joined.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. It was, it resulted in litigation.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, hearing none, let's move to staff updates, and that would be, I think, Jesse Enright and Roger Carpenter first.
And while they're coming up, I'll just say we're continuing in the casino prohibition vein. We've done 2 years now where internal audits has reviewed the accuracy of some retailers' reporting of their non-lottery proceeds. And I thought it would be nice for the commission to hear from both internal audits about how that review was done, but also to hear from retail contracts about how the follow-up compliance work is completed. Yeah, that's.
Okay, good afternoon. For the record, my name is Roger Carpenter, a senior internal auditor with the lottery's internal audit department.
Hello, my name is Jesse Enright. I am the compliance analyst in the retail contracts department here at the lottery. And before we present the results of the most recent retailer compliance reviews, we thought it best to provide you with a brief overview of the casino prohibition rule as it pertains to our existing retailers, and how lottery monitors compliance, specifically with the retail group that we're discussing, which are the limited menu retailers and cafe small eateries. So some key provisions of the rule, the casino prohibition rule prohibits the operation of casinos in Oregon. Any video lottery terminals may not be placed in any establishment that are casinos. Per the rule, an establishment is not a casino if the annual non-lottery sales are at least 50% of the establishment's total income. If non-lottery sales are less than 50% of the business's total income, the casino prohibition rule requires lottery to consider other factors to determine if the business is compliant with the casino prohibition rule. Those other factors include history, appearance from the external, outside of the premises, inside of the premises, what sort of food items do they have, what kind of menus do they have, advertising, look at records if necessary, and then the overall atmosphere as a reasonable person would see the establishment. Those are the factors that we apply. And if the risk is if requirements are not met, then they're out of compliance with the casino prohibition rule, and they face contract termination if they can't get back into compliance. So the segment of the population we're looking at today and during this retailer compliance review is limited menu retailers and the cafe small eateries. It's an important segment to lottery's business because this group accounts for 281 retailers of the 2,220 retailers, which is just over 12% of the video lottery retailers. Yet this group accounts for 24% of video lottery revenue, which equates to $232 million annually. The average annual lottery sales for this group is $826,000, and each retailer on average earns about $171,000. So each limited menu retailer and cafe small eatery are assessed every year by retail contracts. Specifically, I do most of the on-site inspections for each of these 260 to 280 retailers statewide. So we complete a sales analysis for each location, meaning they submit their gross sales reports. which show us their non-lottery figures during a 12-month period. And then we determine the percentage of non-lottery versus their lottery compensation. So that's where we get to whether they meet that 50% threshold or not. 52% of those retailers reported non-lottery sales of less than 50% of their total income. So of those retailers, you got to go out and apply those other factors to determine if they're in compliance with the casino prohibition rule.
Is that, is the 50, I was a little bit surprised at the 52, but then I started wondering, is that an aberration, or is that pretty much every year, and then you have to go out and work with about that many every year to see what the issue is, and is there a possibility of getting them into compliance, and what else?
Yeah, I was expecting probably somebody to comment on that number, but that number has been pretty much the same over the last, I've been with lottery 9-10 years, and that number's been about that over that 9-10 year period.
Are these the same retailers every year?
Oftentimes, they are, yes. It fluctuates a little bit, but for the most part, they're the same retailers. So
And
I do.
Just as a reminder, sorry, Jesse, Madam Chair, just because their sales are below the 50% threshold doesn't mean they're out of compliance.
Right.
It's just a
It's just
trigger
an
for,
assessment to
it's a
go in and
trigger
look.
for a deeper look by Jesse.
I just
Exactly.
didn't realize there were so many we were having to do that deeper look on, was more my,
Every year.
Yep.
Yeah. So site inspections are done at all of these locations, but a more in-depth observation and assessment is done if their non-lottery sales are less than 50%. So every location is visited every year. If it's necessary, business records are reviewed. If it looks like the business, what I see in the business reporting doesn't seem to match up, then we'll look at the records to assure that's correct. So at this point, I'm going to hand it off to Roger, and he can discuss the details of the retailer compliance reviews.
So as Director Pack mentioned, we just completed the second round of reviews of the retailers, and our plan is to cover all 281 over a 5-year period. So this year, we covered 62. And the reviews that we did as part of the internal audit process was not to replace the work that Jesse and Retail Contracts does, but it's a supplemental effort to put a sharper focus and also to look a little deeper in how the retailers can change and get higher accuracy and ensure compliance in the long run. So our objectives and scope of the reviews were to, most importantly, measure the accuracy of their gross sales reports, which they're required to send to Retail Contracts every year, and then also to identify which revenues they are properly including or they are including that are not allowed under the casino prohibition rule, and looking at the quality and completeness of the records that they have, and as well just looking at how reliable their processes are, the business practices and controls, knowing that a more sophisticated set of processes that they use means that we can place higher reliability on the records that they've provided to us.
so it's a question on
Yes.
that last slide. I just want to make sure I understand it. I sort of understand why we wouldn't allow complimentary food as part of a non-lottery revenue. I'm not understanding the non-alcoholic beverage. Is there a rationale on that? Is that in the rule, in the law, or like it's in the law?
They can include non-alcoholic beverages part of their food.
So why does it say an example? Is it complimentary food and,
Oh,
I thought you were saying
complimentary food
this was an
and
example
beverage.
of non-lot, that things that couldn't be considered non-lottery.
Yes,
They
'cause-
can be considered
'cause-
non-lottery.
Well, we have had some rare occurrences where a retailer will take the value of the non-alcoholic beverages and food that they give away free to lottery players, but then they include that in their gross sales report as if they received cash for it,
Above
but
the
they
sales.
didn't.
Got it.
And I can understand it's confusing because the report is titled gross sales report, and they interpret that as being, that's a gross sale, not a net sale.
I see.
So it's a difference,
They're
but
both-
it
I
is,
misread it. They're
In,
both
in the bullet,
complementary.
yes, the complimentary refers to both the food
Sorry.
and the beverage.
yeah,
Sorry.
the non-
right,
Yeah.
yeah. So anyway, yeah,
I get it now.
okay, yes. Year to year, as we compare, we want to have an even distribution between the large chains and the smaller independent retailers, because we are going to compare it year to year. So there's a distribution by geography, the size of the retailer, and so on. So we are selecting our sample carefully. And this slide is meant to show that 86% of the retailers that we looked at were reporting accurately, and we define accurately within plus or minus 5%.
I actually
And-
thought that was kind of reassuring, and then you
Mhm.
have some that are underreporting that boosts that a little bit better too.
Yes, and usually, they can't really explain why there's a variance, and you have to understand that many of these retailers work on unsophisticated
Yeah.
sales systems and recording devices and so on, so we take all that into account, but we do try to understand why they were not reporting accurately, and usually it's hard, it's difficult for them to explain. So in the audit that we did the previous year, we made some specific recommendations to improve on some of the things that we saw that were technically sales that they should or should not have been reporting. And our recommendation to retail contracts was to add to the instructions that the retailers get. It gives them more definitive guidelines as to, because they're not going to pull out the casino prohibition rule, but this gives them, bullet points and what's allowed and what's not allowed. So we did see some improvement in a couple of areas where they are allowed to include in sales, but they didn't know. We would rather have them include everything that the rule allows them to. And then there was no change in the number of times or number of retailers reporting improperly the complimentary food and beverages. And then, as I mentioned, we look at the quality of the documentation for the sales, and the observation that we made in 2018 was that there were 6 retailers that did not have sufficient documentation. We recommended that retail contracts improve those instructions, as I said in the prior slide. And then we did see some improvement. So I think that's definitely progress that we're encouraged by. And part of the casino prohibition rule requires the retailers to have cost of sales records. That helps retail contracts and the audit, the reviews that we do measure the reliance on their sales records by doing a margin analysis. Now, we did see more instances in this round of audits, so we're going to add further instructions, or retail contracts will add additional instructions to make it clear what they should be retaining and what they're allowed to do.
So not that I think we have the resources to do this, but if a retailer called, I mean, is there a way they could call if they had questions and have someone answer their questions during the year? Or is this just comes up when you go out and we do the annual review and then we kind of tell them after the fact that they did something wrong? Do you get people calling and saying, I don't know what I'm doing here, help me out?
Yes, for this particular group, they typically call me. There's around 280 of them.
Yeah.
And they will get their gross sales reports sent out to them come April of this year. And if they have questions on the gross sales reports, those are all forwarded to me
Okay.
to answer.
So after doing, or visiting 60 retailers and doing a review, we compiled the results. And this year, we recommended to retail contracts that Jesse do follow-up reviews for 10 of them. And I think that the number from 11 to 10 is pretty insignificant change. I would say that there was one company that owned 4 retailers, and 2 of them really had the issues that we noted that would indicate a follow-up review. So that number 10 could have really been 8, but Jesse's going to go visit the office that owns all 4 of them. So they will get reviews. And Jesse did do follow-ups. I think he's going to talk about that next, but we were encouraged by the results from Jesse's follow-up reviews that he did based on what we observed last year. Okay.
Yes, so the follow-up reviews I did this year were a result of the compliance reviews done in 2018, and there were initially 11 retailers. One of them closed early in 2019, so dropped the number down to 10. It was promising when I went back and looked at their records. It appeared anyway that the extra direction and guidance they got from the year prior definitely helped, because it was easier to complete the records evaluation during the follow-up. They knew what we were expecting. They had it laid out. Again, not the most sophisticated of records at times, but it definitely meets the requirements of the casino prohibition rule. There was one retailer that owns multiple locations, and there was some question about keeping the cost of goods records separate from the other locations. So next year, we're going to be looking at his other locations to make sure that that issue has been completely resolved. But for the most part, it was definitely promising during the follow-up reviews. So that's all we have for you. We welcome any questions you may have.
Roger, could you go back a slide and comment on the
Yes.
2 that you're re-auditing this year?
So, as I mentioned, we had 62 in our sample this year, but I'm reporting the results for only 60. And that's because one of the retailers had their hard disk crash, and when we asked for the records, he brought this physical disk drive that was no longer in a PC. And but he did say that they've implemented the Square system, which is a very, very good, dependable cloud-based system. So we cannot measure the accuracy of something we can't look at. So the answer is to do a re-audit or schedule an audit in the next round. And then there was another retailer that just really didn't have any records to look at, and that will be on Jesse's follow-up list. So.
Thank you.
Jesse sounds very busy. So.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So I think that the combination of the work between retail contracts and internal audit, I think this is a good approach to ensuring ongoing compliance with the casino prohibition rule, especially in terms of the sales accuracy that they are reporting.
Well, I really appreciate the constant review and assistance you're providing these people. I also think, overall, when I reviewed the presentation, I thought, you focus on who's having problems, but at the end I kind of thought, well, if you think about it, there are a lot of people here doing it right, too.
Yes.
And so,
Right.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments from the commission? Great. Thank you very much. And Kathy Stromberg. Product updates.
Good afternoon, Chair Sadoff, Commissioners.
Director Pack. For the record, this is Kathy Stromberg, and I am the Corporate Affairs Officer at the lottery. So normally Farshad would be showing you our sales performance dashboards, but that go back and look at year-over-year, 13-week, 3-year averages, which is a good macro view of our performance and how we're doing. Today, we're going to take a little bit of a different view and give you more of a view that the product team looks at as they look at performance, which is predominantly how are we doing against forecast of sales and transfers, but more importantly, maybe connect some dots on what they're looking at within each of the product line within the portfolio that are the key drivers that they see that they can pull levers on to help meet the sales and help us get to the transfers. I think maybe give you a different look perspective on it, as well as be able to connect dots of why each product within the portfolio is important. Some have better cross-sell and upsell opportunities, and how promotions and other kinds of things help them in pulling the levers to drive to the goals that we set. So with that, so the first one, we'll start with the big one, video. This is the lion's share of our sales and transfers. What you're looking at is actuals versus forecasts, and that's what the team tends to focus on. Kind of overall, this portfolio has a unique position in our portfolio because this is the instant or immediate gratification segment that we're able to reach, and so that's important to the team as they think about what are the levers to pull. It continues to be strong this year. We're definitely seeing growth year over year, as well as we're ahead on both our forecasts for sales and transfers. You heard a lot about the procurement process, and Barry talked about it up front. We feel really confident, given the pilot that we did, that incremental sales as we roll out the new terminals is going to be extremely helpful in us continuing to hit the numbers and to grow in this area. I would say that Lindsay and the team, probably the key takeaway for them is content is king, just like with Netflix. They really focus a lot of their energy on the content and actively manage that mix. And there's a number of things that they look at, making sure we have statewide licensed games, making sure that the mix is also actively managing legacy favorites and timing and when to bring those back into the portfolio, how long to keep them in, so that we're optimizing and giving the refreshes in a way that our customers want, as well as making sure we're offering those casino games. And short-term launches is kind of the McDonald's McRib idea, which is limited time offers. You know, you're only going to get it for a while, so make sure you come and play. So they try and continue to work all these strategies and the timing, because at the end of the day, what they're really looking for is how do they optimize the return on the investment, and making sure that they're matching content refresh to customers' needs, wants, and desires. And one of the other things is, of the top 25 video lottery weeks ever, 15 of those were in 2019, which included the top all-time highs. And so we've got some strong numbers that we're trying to keep up with. And the other thing that we're keeping in mind is needing to, those terminals, and why we had Aristocrat and IGT, is that allows us different types of content. So they've got the added work to try to strategize and figure out how do you give the right variety to the right customers in the right retail outlets. So they got a lot of mixed management going on to try to optimize this. The intelligent platform, which the team is in the process of upgrading, is just continues to help us manage this part of the portfolio even better, because we can buy, launch, hold, relaunch content in a more automated way over time, and that's why why the technology upgrades are really important in helping the team, as well as giving them more and more data to be able to manage that. So, any questions on video? Moving along then to Scratch-Its, which is our next biggest revenue generator in the portfolio. So, but a big jump down from that, from that high of video. So probably a couple of things to remember that the team has to keep in mind when they think about Scratch-Its. From a transfer standpoint, prize payouts really drive the transfer. So that's really a critical driver. And in this particular part of our portfolio, this product line, revenue is recognized at the time of activation, but then there's the lag of return. So there's a lot of management that has to go on from that standpoint. And
So our sales actually dropped, not by much, but the transfers went up.
yes.
Is that the timing issue you're talking about?
That is a little bit of the timing issue and the lagging and some of that. It makes it a lot more complicated. It takes a lot of time for the team. The other thing is that in this piece, we can only, we don't have ticket level accounting capability. It's only at the pack level. So the team does a lot of manual effort today in managing all of that inventory. And so, again, they're keeping an eye, how do we optimize that? And so with the Aurora upgrade and other things that they're looking at in process improvements with the operations side of the house, how do we get better and better at managing that? Because that timing is important in this part of the portfolio, and making sure, and I'll talk about this, and the other one is making sure we've got the right inventory in the right place, right? Because too much, and then our returns are going to be higher. So that is a big play. Overall, beginning in August, we were seeing a weakening in the sales, but with the holiday season, we really had a strong holiday, and that's helping it come back. From that standpoint. So this product line also is highly impacted by the jackpots. We tend to see when you have really high jackpots, you can see as much as a 10% lift. This is a cross-selling part of our portfolio that we have to watch. And so that's another dynamic that makes it trickier in the forecasting process. Yep.
Kathy, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, are you saying that when Powerball or Mega Millions jackpots are high, people buy more scratch tickets at the
Yes.
same time?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Sorry. You said it much better.
So is your forecast contemplating that? It looks pretty flat.
Yeah, it is, it is.
Okay.
And that's the problem, right? It's
Yeah.
all, they're all tied and they're all not very predictable. So we
Okay.
tend to be a little more conservative. Does
Right.
that make sense? Yeah. So from a management perspective, the things that the team is really looking at, one of the things that they see a real opportunity in, which is a change. Gaming vendors tend to have the strategy, more facings, which means more scratch-it tickets at point of sale is better. What the team has found, now that's better for the manufacturer, for the gaming vendor, but it's not necessarily good for us. So the team has really been working on a strategy to get the right sizing the number of facings with the retail volume. So if you think about it, retailers that have higher traffic, it makes more sense to have more facings. When you don't have that higher traffic, how do you, again, optimize the right number of facings? Again, back to all the complexity of managing that inventory and making sure we don't end up with too much that we have to take back These are all the things that they're working on to really make sure that we're optimizing that. So it's really about matching the inventory to demand and being a lot more efficient at that, and that's the best way to get to a good return on investment for this portfolio. Another thing the team's been working on a lot is, again, to extend the play. Second Chance has been something that the team has been working on for a while now. And we're seeing a sellout in Second Chance around 96%. So that, again, helps us optimize the portfolio and all the expenses that we put out there on that particular product line. The other thing that's really important about Second Chance, it allows us, because you have to register to get the opportunity to play Second Chance, it moves from an anonymous play to a known play. We can learn something about that customer, we know who they are, and we can see a little bit more insights into that, which we hope to be able to use in the future to do a better job. So again, the team here is working a lot on the customer experience. What are those small innovations that they can add to keep this portfolio fresh, as well as how do we optimize our return on investment? Keno, again, it has a very specific subsegment of playership that it focuses on. If you like it, you like it. If you don't, you don't. And so, again, it's a small piece, but all of these add up and give us an opportunity to touch different Oregonians with a different type of play. That big spike there was an extra week, so weeks matter, prize payout, and the weeks drive our ability to hit the goals in this portfolio. And again, just like our draw games, the jackpot has been slightly slower or lower in 20 than it was in 19, and so that drives why we're predominantly behind a little bit.
So at some point, you don't have to do it today, but somebody needs to remind me why we continue with Keno. Our forecast looks like we're predicting
It
less
is,
in 4
yep,
years than we
yep.
have today. So I know there are lots of reasons, mix and all
Right.
that. You don't have to do it, but
Right.
that
It's
is
we
interesting.
have a piece of real estate, we've invested in that. The question is, what do we want to do with that over time? Right now, we're really trying to optimize what we have and looking ahead. That's part of this portfolio that Tina and the team, the lottery products, the traditional ones, where do we go? What are some strategies we can do differently? So, yep, we will give you updates as we work on that one. Jackpots, again, this is all about, you guys know this headline, we say it all the time. Jackpots drive the revenue here. And we have been down. I was hoping I was going to announce today Powerball was at 394 million, but that hit. And so we are, and Mega Millions is up to about 140 million. But that, this portfolio, again, we're really trying to, we don't do a lot in promotion until jackpots get high. We really, again, are trying to make sure we're optimizing it, it plays a different part, and we're trying to.
So am I thinking of jackpots right? It feels like in terms of forecasting for your business, that would be something that you would exclude overall, that you would, it's sort of you adjust for that and take that out of the mix. Is that the way to think about this? It feels like you can't really predict this, so
That's where I think the historical data and looking 3 years back and trying to figure out, but yes, we take a very conservative view of that at the portfolio, because we don't want to put the assumptions in that it's good. Well, if we would have put the assumptions in, it was like last year, which we knew we wouldn't have a year like that. We would have been in the yellow, and this looks at that kind of stuff. So the new child to the portfolio scoreboard. We've been talking a lot about this one, so you'll see our handle or our wagers are hitting our forecast, but GGRs are a little down, and I'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. So in Q2, scoreboard overall was 45 million in wagers, which was 1.8 million in bets. We were able to get over 22,000 unique players into this part of our portfolio. Margins are around 6.2%. In the forecast, they were targeted around 8%, so we're running a little below that. That's an area we're looking at. If just for perspective, Nevada is about 5.5% GGRs. New Jersey's about 6.4%. A lot of things differently about them, but we're probably thinking from an assumption standpoint, we were a little aggressive out the gate, but I'll talk a little bit more. There are strategies that we're working on that will help us over time. Probably the biggest thing to talk about here are the assumptions that we made going in because it was brand new. We had to make some, and we're looking and adjusting. So the first one, how do we capture the black market? Some of the things that are a challenge right now is, as we always say, having college would help us in this particular place, and we are beginning to watch how much of not having college isn't about just getting incremental sales, but how much will it erode players that signed up originally that may decide they'll go back to maybe another account that they used in the black market that allowed them to do both. So we're monitoring, trying to understand that. Tax withholdings, which we knew would be a challenge certainly with the black market, but also with interstate trade with the tribes. They don't take the withholdings at the time of the win, and so that allows, especially players that play more, the ability to have those funds available longer. So we're looking at those kinds of things in margins. There are a number of things we're starting to look at that will help us understand these better over time. Certainly retail, we think, would add to our ability to hit higher margins, as well as getting parlays up. There's other kinds of bets that would do better, and so those are things we're working on. There were, as we talked about, product technical issues that we also think are contributing to this. Probably the best way to think about it, if you think of, we just hit over 50,000 registered users for scoreboard. So if you think of a pie of, okay, now there's 50,000 people that came in the front door. So about 23,000 of them came in the front door, they registered, but they didn't deposit. So they're sitting at the entryway. They haven't really come into the house yet. About 1,000 of them registered, they deposited, but they're not playing. So that's even smaller. So we're really looking at people that registered, deposited, and play around 26 or 27,000 people, right? So, and even of that, we kind of have been starting to look at how many have been active within the last 30 days versus haven't been active. In that number, about 21,000 have been active, got about 5,000 that have gone over 30 days. So we're starting to look at that funnel to understand the behaviors and starting to look at our marketing strategy a little bit differently. We will continue to do acquisitions, so how do we get more people through the front door? But we're also looking at the people that have stood up and said, hey, I'm interested, and registered, and how do we start to market to them and do behavioral marketing? So based on their behaviors, are there incentives and things we can do to get them to move through and bet, or to bet more frequently? So we're looking for conversion and frequency, and that's work that we're just starting to work on with the team. We also just put an offer out, and we're crossing our fingers that we're going to get a sports book product manager on board, and that person will have a lot more industry knowledge. And although we have that with our vendor, having it inside and being able to look at it from an Oregonian profile will really help us work with our partner to figure out those strategies of what types of bets we want to promote, bonuses, when we should activate those, what are good ones, things like that. So what about specials that are just for the Oregon market that might be more attractive, and things like that. We're also putting in place a community panel so that we can start going out and you can see numbers, but why behind, okay, they're behaving this way, but what's behind that? And if we did that, would this really help? So all of that work is being put in place so that we can continue to make sure that we're getting to the goals that we're seeing the industry at on this portfolio. So it's early, encouraged, but a lot to do.
Well, it's, clearly, we're learning a lot, and there's a lot to learn about scoreboard.
Yeah.
I want to say thank you, though. I know that either I or some of us asked about the new format, and I myself find it really helpful to have it presented as the what you're forecasting, what you're thinking going forward in time, what the trend is, and what we actually see. It's a very helpful way for me to see how this is doing. So thank you for that.
Okay, good. Thank you.
I have one question, Kathy. It's actually something I have exactly, but kind of your idea with the Super Bowl coming up real quick. I wondered if more people were moving into Scoreboard and had downloaded the app. It's really the first big event that we've had since the launch. And basketball's still leading the game, it looks like,
Right.
but I just
Yeah.
wondered if the football event's going to take us over the top.
Where, there's no big leap that everybody's rushed to come in to do it, but it's still, that's usually something they do closer to game day. So we're going to have an interesting weekend, watching and learning what exactly happens there. So,
Thank you.
I
yeah.
just want to remind commissioners that these big events like the Super Bowl carry a lot of opportunity, but also a lot of risk. And if you remember, the shortest Super Bowl, or the lowest scoring Super Bowl we had a year or two ago cost Las Vegas millions of dollars. So we're going to be watching this weekend with excitement and trepidation, and we'll report back on how it goes.
Yeah. Thank you. We've now reached the point on the agenda to see whether or not there's any other business that, yeah.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We didn't do a legislative report in this commission meeting, but we will next month. Just a reminder, the short session starts on Monday. There are two bills that relate to lottery, one related to a prohibition on college sports wagering as part of Scoreboard. We are in conversations with the universities who are advocating for that bill to see if we have some middle ground that we can approach. And there is a second bill that relates to the types of gaming that can be offered on mobile devices. I'm meeting with the sponsor of that bill on Monday to see what her goals and intentions are and see if we can work together to find a way to move forward on that. So I'll report more out to you in the interim, but also at the next meeting.
Great, thank you for that. Any other business? Okay, this concludes today's meeting of the Oregon State Lottery Commission. The next meeting is scheduled on February 28. Commissioners will attend this meeting via telephone, and the agenda will be limited to items that need to be addressed by the commission. The public is welcome to attend and listen, but it will not include public comment. The next opportunity for public comment will be at the March 20 meeting. Thank you all for coming, and we are adjourned. Too bad, it was a lot.